The Freedom Riders were a group of activists that protested during the 1960s at the peak of the Jim Crow and separate but equal laws. The Supreme Court found that these laws were unconstitutional, but states still enforced the separate but equal laws that they had. The segregated public transportation was illegal as well. Blacks were treated unfairly because of these laws. Freedom Rise. Then a group of students decided to travel interstate on public transportation, on the Greyhound bus line as well as the Trailways Bus Company. This was going to be a nonviolent protest, which they would help enforce the Supreme Court laws. On behalf of the Freedom Riders, they were a protest crowd. It's a collection of people who gathered to protest a political, social, cultural, economic state. The Freedom Riders, who consisted of blacks and whites, male and females, were understanding of the threats or the danger that they were putting themselves in. As the news spread throughout the southern states of what was happening, mobs began to form to counter-protest these things that they were doing. They would be considered a mob, an intensely emotional crowd that commits or is ready to commit violence. The violence starts. "Kill the niggers and the nigger lovers" was heard by one of the protesters as he exited the bus. These angry mobs used many tactics, such as fire, sticks, punches, and the fear of being thrown in jail, because many of them were backed by the local police in their states and cities, which caused many injuries to the protesters, to the writers, to the journalists, anybody that stood in the way between the protesters, the Freedom Riders, and the mobs, the whites. The need for a leader. As the mob continued to grow, the need for a leader became more important. At that time, Martin Luther King Jr. had came to Alabama to speak to those that were protesting, as well as just blacks in general. At this time, an angry mob gathered outside of the church, and martial law had to be enacted for them to leave the church. Martin Luther King was a very influential leader, and he was the face of most of the civil rights movement. When he refused, the Freedom Riders felt that they were betrayed and let down. But nevertheless, they still continued on with Diane Nash to be their up-and-coming leader. The emotions. According to the textbook, The Social Movement Reader, almost all the cultural work on social movement has been about their conscious beliefs and moral principles. But equally important part of culture consists of their feelings about the world, themselves, and each other on page 103. The Freedom Riders were not going to give up because of the violence they faced. They continued to strive and encourage others to join them because they believed what they were going through was unconstitutional and extremely unfair. Just plain wrong. The convergence theory is what I would relate this social movement to. The convergence theory fits this movement because of the division of the races, of how they felt, how the white felt against the blacks. The cognitive convergence theory is pre-existing vows and beliefs that the group share before they join a crowd. Before the Freedom Riders movement, whites treated blacks with no respect and little to no value or any, as I said, respect. They would harass them, kick them, make them feel belittled, anything to make them show them respect. Because of the racial division, which dated back to slavery, those attitudes that the whites exhibited were deeply rooted. The name-calling, separation, the violence that blacks were subject to was unfair. Blacks stood together and fought against those mobs and the injustice that they faced during these times, non-violently for the world to see. In the end, the laws were changed, and blacks were accepted into society. But it's hard to see the status and reactions blacks still face almost 60 years later from white Americans. And with that, I say thank you.